to Inflight Coffee. It is another absolutely amazing day. But isn't every day an amazing day? I mean, that's how we feel. Happy Saturday to everybody out there. So thankful, so blessed that you are taking time out of your Saturday. Especially, I know it's a holiday weekend for so many of you. I am truly so thankful to have you all on here. I know you're spending time with family and everything else this weekend. Just thankful to have you here on Inflight Coffee. Magda, what is the episode number today? We're season 2, episode 4-ish, somewhere around there, I think. That's where we are. Anyways, let's make a cup of coffee. Let's dive into it. Anna Claypool, great to see you on here as well. We are making some Saturday, Easter weekend coffee. And then we are doing an accident analysis. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful day. I think that's enough coffee. Hey, I loved Sun and Fun, by the way. It was just so amazing to see so many of you, to spend time with you all out there as well. Moved flights around to be here. What a day that is. Hey, some of you, if you're in the Facebook group, if you're watching this in the MzeroA Nation, hop over to the main MzeroA page. I know we also stream it in the Nation, but because we just learned, because the Nation's a private group, it just pops up Facebook user. Like you see where it says Good Morning Team, it just says Facebook user there. So I don't know who you are, but I'm sure you're amazing. Jonathan Vargas, good to see you at Sun and Fun. Good to see you here again. I did receive the email, so thank you for that. Andrea's making coffee too. You got to make the coffee. Mr. Linfield, the retired Mr. Linfield, great to see you on here as well. Let's make a cup of coffee. Then I want to talk a bit about Sun and Fun and everything else, how amazing that was. We've got this here. Let's do our pre-flight checks, right? I mean, we got to do that, Rich Prescott. All right. We've got our water. We've got our coffee. We've got our mug. We've got our spoon. Pre-flight check complete. Last thing we need, Magda? Clear prop. Clear prop. That's the most important thing. That's the most important thing right there. Bernie, great to see you. Who else has their coffee brewing? Who else has their coffee? Hunter's the one that moved flights. I love that attitude, Hunter. I absolutely love that attitude. Any chance to learn, that's important. Tony, great to see you. Bud Owens, I think you're a great man too. I appreciate the kind words as well. As Rich, hey Rich, do you say Rich Prescott or like the city in Arizona where Embry-Riddle is, Prescott? I learned that the other day. A kid from Embry-Riddle came at Sun and Fun. I said, which campus do you go to? He goes, I go to Prescott. Did they make a new campus? I'm not familiar with that campus. I always thought it was Prescott. Prescott. Who would have known? Let's add some water over here. That's all good to go. John Dela Cruz, great to see you as well. Now your name shows up. You just had to move over as well. Jay Costello, good morning, guys. Already got my coffee made. Got my high performance done Monday. Golf clap. Golf clap. I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Hey, we are doing an accident analysis. I'm making a mess, Magda. We're doing an accident analysis here live, as I make a mess live on national television and everything else. You all know the rules, how we start out. I need to know, as Jonathan Vargas already did, where are you watching from and how's the weather? Where are you watching from? How's the weather? But when you tell me how the weather is, I have one specific request. As John Dela Cruz will tell you, you're only allowed to use emojis to tell me. Magda, this is a crisis. This is a crisis, MzeroA Nation. The honey jar, like Winnie the Pooh says, should never get this low. Winnie the Pooh, does anyone know what I'm talking about? Maybe I'm showing my age here. We gotta let the honey drip now. We're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to wait. We have a honey crisis. Andre, great to see you in the Pensacola, Destin, Panhandle-ish area. I can't remember which city. I just know it's up there. Great to meet you and your controller buddy, Robin. Robin, are you and Bill sitting next to each other as you watch this, or are you in different rooms? That's just what I want to know. Jay Costello, great to see you. Dover Air Force Base, Mr. Dela Cruz, good to see you. Santa Monica, California. Maryland is Mike Maloney. You know, I was born in Baltimore. Reisterstown, to be more specific. Did you know that? Fun Jason fact for the day. Tatum in northwest Iowa, it is sunny in Iowa. Well, after you dealt with all that nasty cold front that just went through, I bet you're thankful. I think we've averted crisis. I mean, it's still low. And then the honey gets messy and you get sticky. It's a problem, guys. It's a real problem here. All right, honey and coffee is really the only way you should sweeten coffee. That's my professional opinion. We stir it with a spoon. Yes, John Dela Cruz, I have a spoon. I know you're going to ask that. He remembers Spoongate 2021 or whatever year Magda did that. We're doing an accident analysis here today. I did get sticky. That's going to bother me all in-flight coffee here. South Africa, I see checking in. Rainy in South Africa. Username Florida Spotter here from Lakeland. I've heard of Lakeland. Here's a nice place. T, good to see you. Bud Owens, Kansas City, Missouri, and his beautiful VFR weather. Well, I appreciate y'all checking in. If I had to say how the weather is in Florida, it was chilly this morning. Magda didn't even go outside to do her morning reading. It was like 75, and she goes, it's way too cold, and she came back inside. I said, wow, that's embarrassing, but it happens to the best of us. Now it's hot and everything else. So Johnny Wilson in the UK, good to see you. Seaton in Tucson, Arizona, good to see you. Go Wildcats. All right, now, before we get into that, while my coffee is cooling as well, we are doing, so you know this is the year of 2-3 Mike Zulu. Every month we're giving away something very, very cool. Last month we were giving away an iPad, and I got thinking, okay, every April I do an accident analysis series, April accident analysis, 3 A's. I know, genius. May is mock check, right? May. You can see where I get the dad jokes. As I get older, the dad acronyms and dad jokes become stronger and stronger. But as we're getting ready to do April analysis, I was thinking, what do you give away for an accident analysis series that's beneficial but still cool as well with all of that? So we are giving away, I'm a big proponent of having a survival kit. And I'm not talking like a prepper survival kit. I'm talking like you ditched it in the Everglades. You survive, of course, because you've watched all the MzeroA videos and you're an online ground school member, and you know how to make a great off-airport landing. You've made a real soft field landing. You know the ABCs of an emergency. You know how to maintain your chilliness. Is that a way to keep your nerves calm in that important situation? But now you're in the middle of the Everglades. What do we do, right? So I always keep a survival kit, and it's not here, but the one I'm going to show you is under the seat of 2-3 Mike Zulu, that if that happens, it's a Pelican case I grab, and I'm right out of that airplane. It floats, everything else. So, Hunter, it will not include a fanny pack, but I have parts of it here. It literally just arrived. We've been ordering a bunch of stuff. That's not part of it. It'll be a bunch of stuff. It's heavy. You're going to do a new weight and balance for this survival kit. Maybe I bought a tool kit on accident. Okay, here she is. So anyways, if you wish to win this is pretty much the same one I have here. Well, let me show it to you first before I tell you how to win it. Uh-oh, Magda, it's zip tied shut. Do I have like scissors? Am I strong enough to break this? Hold on, let's see if I can break this on national television. Like a man. All right, Bill Linfield's like, I knew Jason could do it. All right, so inside a beautiful Pelican case. These are made from flight level 220, where we all wish to fly. I feel I shouldn't be playing with this live. This is a handheld marine red signal flare. I'm scared to touch it and move it, aim downwind, right? This is like, you hope to never have to use it, but who secretly would be like, Jason, it'd be really cool if you opened it up and used it right now. It's do not use indoors. 700 candle power, Coast Guard approved. Okay, I'm just gonna put that back. I'm gonna put that over here, because if a signal flare goes off, we'll get a lot of views and everything else, but that's a problem. First aid kit, emergency drinking water, looks like fishing line. It is fishing line. Look at that. You guys do a little fishing out in the Everglades for pythons. Your whistle. Anyways, it's a whole big survival kit, survival blanket, signal mirror. I'm going to guess you have to be over 18 to apply for this contest, because there is a knife in here. Are we allowed to? I don't know. We got to talk to the MzeroA lawyers about how we're going to give away a knife. But there is a knife in here. It's one of those things I shouldn't have opened. It's like when you buy a tent for the first time and I get, oh! It's doing exactly what I said not to do. All right, we're going to play with that later so I don't set off a signal flare live. We also have a life vest coming. We also have some of the Checkmate emergency checklists. And most importantly, you're going to hear more about this. I'll be sharing more about this. You're going to get a bunch of these. Who flies with a CO detector? Whether it's one like this, whether an electronic one, it doesn't matter who flies with a CO detector. If not, well, you have an opportunity to win one. Before I tell you where to go, although you probably already know, Magda and I had a CO incident this winter, and I shared a little bit about it. So I guess we took the kids, my parents live up kind of south Ocala, so we normally go into Leesburg to drop the kids off to see my parents. So we flew up to Leesburg. It was a cold day, even by Florida standards. It got really cold in Leesburg, dropped the kids off. Magda and I get back in the airplane to fly home, and she goes, "I'm really cold, can we turn the heat on?" I said, "Absolutely." So I turned the cabin heat on. We're taxiing down. We get to the run-up area, and right as we come to a stop, and I have one of the automated CO detectors from Guardian, right as we come to a stop, this beep, this really weird noise. I go, "What is that noise?" Like, I hadn't heard that noise before. And I look down, and sure enough, I'm getting a CO annunciator. I said, "Huh, that's weird." So the doors are open and everything, which was the strange part. So I turn the cabin heat off, and it goes away. I got to think, well, maybe it's, from when I stopped, there was some backdraft from the exhaust. I was taxiing with a tailwind, so maybe it blew some of the exhaust back in, and it picked up that way. So I said, let's do our run-up. We'll test it again. Magda and I do our run-up. We shut all the doors, shut all the windows here. We pull up to the hold short line. I said, before we get flying, let me just check it again. Can't make this up. I pull on the cabin heat. Within seconds, the CO detector goes off again. I said, okay, we've got a problem here. I turn it off. We ventilate the cabin. Again, it goes away in seconds. So, okay, I hate to break it to you, but you're flying home without heat. Now, since we've just flown with the kids, Gavin and Ella accidentally left her Moana blanket in there. Moana's a Disney character, for those who don't know. So the whole flight home, I have pictures. I'm not allowed to share them. I had the whole flight home, Magda's wrapped in a Moana blanket as we flew home, because it was very chilly, especially once you got to altitude. After further investigation, and again, we don't use the cabin heat much in Florida, we learned that we did have an exhaust leak, so much so that there was actually soot, like black soot from the exhaust sitting in the duct that goes in the cabin heat. Like, it was that bad of an exhaust leak. So that exhaust went off to power flow to get a whole new exhaust with that. Let me tell you, CO is not something to mess with. It is a colorless, odorless killer. And what would happen is you would just pass out, and you wouldn't even know why. And obviously it would lead to a crash. We're not talking about a CO-related crash today. We're talking about a different crash. But if you want to win this survival kit, Micah Messer and others with some other great stuff in there too. Life Vest is going to come with it. Head over to MzeroA Contest. MzeroAcontest.com. So you can enter to win it. At the end of this month, we're going to do a big live stream. I want to say the big live stream will be the 28th, which is a Friday night. We're going to give away the survival kit. I will play with the signal flare more, but for now I'm not going to touch it. And we're going to go from there. So MzeroAcontest.com. By the way, John Dela Cruz said the Sentry CO detector saved his life once. Cracking the exhaust, I pulled the carb heat, got detection on the Sentry. Love it, my friend. Listen, it is not something to mess around with. James Nelson said there was one on the panel the last time I took lessons in. It changed the charcoal color when we were leaving. My instructor said, oh, it's been that way. Yeah, well, here's the thing. You have to be diligent with and I have the electronic one that's panel mounted. They make it some that are not panel mounted. You can use these ones. Let me take the sticker off so you don't know how much it costs. You can see the colors a little bit there. Obviously black, like you said, is danger. As you can see, the mistake flight schools make is they go ahead and they put these down like by the footboard where you can't ever see it. Well, this thing, once this is activated, once it's taken on this package, it's only good for a year. So basically every annual inspection, you should be changing this thing out as well. And again, these are easy. These are inexpensive, easy way to do it, but you need to put them in a spot where they can make it into your scan and you can actually see them. If not, it's not doing you any good. But I would, especially, and that's in Florida, team. If you're flying in a really cold place like the frozen tundra of Wisconsin, like Brad is, you're going to consider having one. Brad, you missed it. I was just playing with a signal flare earlier. He came in late. He missed the signal flare. All right, let's get to our featured presentation here today. I've already been talking for 15 minutes here. We're going to do an accident analysis. And as I read to you this accident, I need you just to start to build the chain of events, of mistakes, of things that are happening with this accident here. I'm going to be reading, I don't have a video for it. I'm going to be reading you an NTSB report. And many of you are familiar with this accident. This accident happened back when I was in my flight training. I was probably working on my, this was 05, 06, I think. I was probably working on my CFI about that point. And I remember this accident very, very well. There's so much we can learn from this, even in general aviation. It is related to the airlines. It's a Part 121 operation. But there's still so much we can learn from this, even in general aviation. So I want you to start, and I'll leave the chat up the entire time. I want you to start to point out some red flags or point out some things you would have done differently if you were in this situation. So we're going to start with the end in mind. Normally we build up the accident, then the accident happens. I'm going to share with you how the accident happens here, what happens, and then we're going to build the story from there. So you know the finish line, you know where we're ending, and we'll take it from there. Let's work on this here together. On August 27th, 2006, at about 6:06 Eastern Daylight Time, so that's bright and early in the morning here, a Bombardier CL-600, November 431 Charlie Alpha, crashed during takeoff from the Bluegrass Airport, Lexington, Kentucky. The flight crew was instructed to take off from runway 22, but instead lined up the airplane on runway 26 and began the takeoff roll. The airplane ran off the end of the runway and impacted the airport perimeter fence, trees, and terrain. The captain, flight attendant, and 47 passengers were killed. That's a bullet point there. A footnote, and the first officer received serious injuries. The airplane was en route to Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Atlanta, Georgia. Night visual conditions prevailed at the time of the accident. Who remembers this accident, by the way? And I'll show the airport diagram here in just a bit. You can see how easy it is to get confused between a runway, say, 22 and a runway 26, right? When you're taking off from that intersection there, the runways are so close, as you'll get to see. By the way, this is one of those 5 a.m. kind of flights. The accident happened technically at 6:06, but still, you're reporting to the airport at 5 a.m. means you're on the hotel shuttle at 4:30 a.m. You add this, and I love waking up early, but I'm not at my prime when I roll out of bed at 5 in the morning. It takes a little bit to get moving and get going there as well. Well, we're going to dissect this a little bit more for those of you who haven't heard of this accident and see what takeaways we can find from it here. So let's go ahead and let's review it now. According to a customer service agent working in the ComAir operations area, the flight crew checked in for the flight at 5:15. All right, so at 5:15, we're already checking in at the gate, right? So leaving your hotel, getting up, maybe getting a breakfast, everything else. This is a I don't know how long it takes everybody to get ready. Some of you are better at getting ready early than others, but I'd imagine these alarms were going off at 4, maybe even 3:45, to get there, to coordinate the hotel shuttle, to get a breakfast, get showered, everything else, because this wasn't just one quick flight to Atlanta. This crew had an entire day's worth of flying ahead of them. So I'm sure they didn't just roll out of bed and go. They needed breakfast and everything else. So next paragraph here. The agent indicated that the crew members were casually conversing and they weren't yawning or rubbing their eyes. They weren't doing anything. They actually interviewed the hotel shuttle driver as well and said, no, they seemed good with everything. The Lexington Air Traffic Control Tower was staffed with just one controller at the time of the accident, airplane's pre-flight activities, taxi, and attempted takeoff. The controller was responsible for all tower and radar positions. This is not uncommon. How many of you fly out of a Delta or know of a Delta where, hey, after 6 p.m. and probably before 6 a.m., it's one guy or one lady that's working clearance, working ground, working tower. That's not all that uncommon. Even in a busy airport like Naples, basically after about 7 p.m., it's a one-man, one-lady show up there, and sometimes they get awfully busy, and I applaud them for that. But you know, this is not uncommon. So before we start saying that the tower should have known, yes, they should have. They were understaffed, whatever it was. There were 2 other departures before this. It was pretty quiet up there. We all know of towers where a controller runs clearance, ground, and tower all the time. All right. Well into the day, Andre says, on a weekday as well. Yeah, you get like a Monday morning or something like that, depending which airport you're out of. That happens. That happens. Okay. So let's continue our story here. About 5:49, the controller stated. Again, this is a clearance now. Cleared to Atlanta Airport via Bowling Green, Erling 2 arrival. Maintain 6,000. Departure 120.75, squawk 6641. The first officer replied, okay, got Bowling Green, missed the other part. 6,000, 20.75, 6641. The controller then repeated, it's Echo, Romeo, Lima, India, November 2 arrival. And the first officer acknowledged the arrival information. I'm going to pause there because I've seen other instructors say, oh, he missed the clearance. Listen, it's early in the morning. I've missed clearances at the prime of the afternoon, whatever it is. I've missed clearances before. I don't believe this is a red flag of asking a controller to repeat a clearance. Maybe because you know the outcome, you might jump to the conclusion and go, oh, he's already showing fatigue, that he needs that. You know what? I can be highly caffeinated and ready to take on the world and still miss a good part of an IFR clearance. Everyone loves to hear the words read back correct, but I know that doesn't always, we don't always get that perfect read back. So I'm not going to put a stamp on that one as a link in the chain of events here, but let's keep moving here with our story. And like Hunter said, better that he asked, by the way, instead of guessing. I like that as well. Midway down your screen, about 5:52, the captain began a discussion with the first officer about which of them should be the flying pilot to ATL. The captain offered the flight to the first officer, and the first officer accepted. About 5:56, the captain stated, "Com Air Standard," which is actually a part of the taxi briefing, and to run the checklist at your leisure. At 5:56 and 34 seconds, we'll start getting more precise here, the first officer began the takeoff briefing, which is part of the before start engines checklist. During the briefing, he stated, "What runway?" He said, "What runway? 24?" To which the captain replied, "It's 22." The first officer continued the takeoff briefing, which included 3 additional references to runway 22. So he got the runway wrong to start, but then 3 other times he mentioned it is runway 22. That's the intended runway. They accidentally took off runway 26. After briefing that the runway end identifier lights were out, the first officer commented, "Came in the other night and it was like lights are out all over the place." So this is the first officer talking about must have flown in the night before and was talking about how dim Lexington was. Lights were out all over the place. The first officer also stated, "Let's take it out and take Alpha. 22 is a short taxi." The captain called the takeoff briefing complete at 5:57 and 40 seconds. Starting at about 5:58 and 15 seconds, the first officer called the first 2 items on the before starting engines checklist. When the captain pointed out that the before starting engines checklist had already been completed, the first officer said, "We did?" And this is where confusion starts to set in a little bit. The captain's calling out a checklist that the first officer's going, "We did that?" And again, I jumped ahead in the NTSB report a little bit, and they did. They already did do the starting engine checklist. We heard some pieces of it there earlier from that Com Air Standard part. And the first officer's already going, "Are you sure we did that?" And I'm totally okay with confirming. Confirm I'm clear to land. We talked about that on the ground school member webinar and everything else last week. I'm A-okay confirming these things. But now when confusion steps in to, did we really do that? It was just, that's why I wanted to put the seconds in there. Yeah, we just did that about 2-3 minutes ago. Again, it's a 5 in the morning flight. You're already in the office and everything else. There's a little bit of complacency starting to sneak in here, as you can see, and unsure. Did we do that? But let's continue. Picking up from we did. Afterward, the first officer briefed the takeoff decision speed, V1, remember this number, as 137 knots and the rotation speed as 142 knots. Let me explain this a little bit further here. V1 is a decision speed, which basically means below V1, if something we don't like happens, we can abort this takeoff and get on those brakes and shut this thing on down and abort the takeoff. Past V1, we are committed to this takeoff. If we hit birds past V1, we're continuing to fly this airplane. If we hit birds before V1, we're aborting this takeoff. Does that make sense to everybody? So beyond V1, we're going, because rotation speed is just shortly after that at 142 knots, as we learned. Our story continues. The flight data recorder, FDR, data for the accident flight started at about 5:58 and 50 seconds. Now, this is interesting. The flight data recorder showed that at some point before the start of the accident flight recording, the pilot's heading bug, and that number 13 there is just a footnote because I copied and pasted directly from the NTSB report. The heading bug had been set to 227, which does correspond to the magnetic heading for the runway of 22. So at some point, who here bugs the runway? 23 Mike Zulu, left on Alpha, right on Bravo, runway 22. Taxi runway 22 via left on Alpha, right on Bravo. How many of you bug runway 22? I'm sure you all write it down, but how many of you actually bug it as well? That's a great, great practice to get in. This flight crew bugged runway 22. Now, mind you, we're going to accidentally take off runway 26. That bug would be off to the left. I'm visualizing that in my mind. That bug would be off to the left if you lined up 26 and you're supposed to be on 22. You bug it, right? All right, the story continues here. At about 6:02 and 1 second, the first officer notified the controller that the airplane was ready to taxi. The controller then instructed the flight crew to taxi the airplane to runway 22, exactly how we bugged it, runway 22. This instruction authorized the airplane to cross runway 26. We don't have the entire clearance here, but that's what he said, the intersecting runway without stopping. The first officer responded, taxi 22. FDR, that's our flight data recorder data, showed that the captain began the taxi at about 6:02 and 17 seconds. About 6:02 and 19 seconds, 2 seconds later, the captain called for the taxi checklist. Beginning at 6:03 and 2 seconds, the first officer made 2 consecutive statements, radar terrain displays and taxi checks complete, that were spoken in a yawning type voice. Okay, I get it. It's 6 in the morning. We're a little bit tired. I haven't flown this aircraft ever as pilot in command, but I can assure you the taxi check is more than 2 items. The taxi check in my 172 is 4 items. So I promise you, a complex aircraft like this has more than 2 items on it. He probably just went through the checklist and just went, yeah. Said the 2 things, what do you say out loud here? Radar terrain displays and, 1 item he said, taxi checks complete. Well, he yawns a little. Again, I'm not mocking this individual in the least bit, and I don't even like talking about accidents that involve fatalities. It's creepy in a way, but we'd be doing these individuals lost in this accident a disservice if we refused to learn about it. And I would just encourage you that if you find yourself rushing through checklists like this or yawning through checklists, it's time to sit back and go, okay, can I pass an I'm safe checklist, right now? Craig said it. I think the first officer failed an I'm safe checklist, and I would agree with that. Second paragraph, let's keep reading here. From about 6:03 and 16 seconds to 6:03 and 56 seconds, so a 45-second conversation, the flight crew engaged in a conversation that was not pertinent to the operation of the flight. That footnote 14 there, I read it. The conversation was basically about how to move up in the company and their status in the company. At this point, Com Air is about to go through a Delta acquisition, and they're just kind of concerned about the company and what's happening with the company and how are they going to move up in the company when Delta comes on board. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It was a 45-second conversation about their jobs. Not pertinent to taxiing this airplane as they're about to make a big mistake, as we learned. To our story again, it was not pertinent to the operation of the flight. At about 6:04 and 1 second, the first officer began the before takeoff checklist and indicated again that the flight would be departing from runway 22. Flight data recorder data showed that about 6:04 and 33 seconds, the captain stopped the airplane at the holding position, commonly referred to as the hold short line, for runway 26. Afterwards, and remember, they were cleared across 26. They stopped at 26. Afterward, the first officer made an announcement over the public address system to welcome the passengers and completed the before takeoff checklist. At about 6:05 and 15 seconds, while the airplane was still at the hold short line for runway 26, the first officer told the controller that COM Air 121 was ready to depart at his leisure. About 3 seconds later, the controller responded, COM Air 191 fly, runway heading, cleared for takeoff. Now listen to this. Neither the first officer nor the controller stated the runway number during the request and clearance for takeoff. Pause there for a second. Listen to, this was 2006. And every controller now has since changed. And this was the standard then. It just became more of a standard now. There was no mention of the runway. Fly runway heading, you're clear for takeoff. To the Mike Zulu, fly runway heading, clear for takeoff. And they read back exactly what they heard. Runway heading, clear for takeoff. Maybe if they heard, fly runway heading, runway 22, you're clear for takeoff. 22, clear for takeoff. And maybe they would have pulled out there and saw a big 26. I know this was nighttime, sunrise time, 6 in the morning. But your landing light still shines very brightly on that runway number. Maybe they would have saw a big 26. Maybe they would have looked at their compass on their attitude, their flight display system, their PFD is the word I was looking for, and saw 26 and the 22 bug off to the side. Maybe that would have done it. I think back to Tenerife. That accent sticks with me. 46 years ago, and we just covered it on the Ground School webinar, and you've seen the video 2 Safer Pilot Challenges ago. The Tenerife accident, where the controller used the instructions, hold for takeoff. Words are such a powerful thing, not just in aviation, but in our life. Hold for takeoff. When is the only time you hear the words for and takeoff together in a sentence nowadays? Cleared for takeoff. They no longer say hold for takeoff. It's hold short, runway 22, landing traffic, whatever it is. And it's always the runway number now. If you find a controller skipping, saying the runway number, you need to pause and go, wait a second, just want to confirm that's runway 22? And it's so powerful. Ocala has one main runway, 36 and 18, and the winds are never 36, 18. Oh, if you want to ever get great crosswind practice, go to Ocala. There's been times where clear to land runway 36, and I'm on the left down for 18 because they told me to set up for left down 18, and I'll politely just confirm it's 18 for to the Mike Zulu. Oh yeah, I'm so sorry, clear to land 18 to the Mike Zulu, right? Just to confirm. That runway number is such a precious thing that you need to make sure the controller is sane and you are sane back. I shared this on the webinar before, and I know you all are doing this. The power of confirmation. How many of you, just type in me in the chat, how many of you have used these words? Your tail number, well, I'll use my tail number in the instance. Naples Tower, to the Mike Zulu, just want to confirm I'm clear to land. How many of you have physically called a tower, you're on short final, you're at 200 feet, and you think, I'm pretty sure I'm clear to land, but I just want to make sure. How many have said that? Type in me in the comments. How many have said that? If you have not said that, that is such a powerful phrase you should use. Just want to confirm I'm clear to land. Just want to confirm you meant 22 and not 26. Just want the power of confirming. We lost 50 lives in 2006 in this crash, passengers involved as well. The first officer was the only one who survived and in rough shape from that. The power of confirmation. You know, and you have to also realize, I know there's many of you watching this, my wife included, that English is not your first language. You may be speaking to controllers that English is not their first language. Now, they speak pretty good English, and my wife speaks really, really good English. There's some of you that English is your first language, and you should still check and confirm. You should always be confirming, right? Use that to your greatest advantage with that. If English is not your first language, or if it is your first language and you could use to even improve on it, will you all just make a commitment to me right now by typing in me in the comments one more time that you are making a commitment to always confirm? Will you just do that? I just feel like there is something powerful about making that affirmation that, yes, Jason, if I'm ever in doubt, I will confirm. If I'm ever in doubt if they cleared me across this runway, I will confirm. If I'm ever in doubt about the runway they cleared me to land on, or if they cleared me to land, I will confirm. If I'm pretty sure they said a left on Bravo, but I think it might be a right on Bravo, I will just stop and confirm. Can I get that? I am committing to doing that right now. Magda's waving her hand at me over there, and I see you all confirm that as well. Hey, Eric, Frank, look forward to seeing you in Oshkosh. Yes, you have to slow down and confirm. I want you all to make many, many, many more in-flight coffees and not statistics that people look at on a spreadsheet. It's just so important to me. Anyways, so let's go back. Let me start at the beginning of this slide here. I just want to read it again because it's so important. Remember, neither the controller nor the pilot said the runway number. Flight data recorder data, I'm starting at the top again because this is too important of a slide to miss. Showed at about 6:04 and 33 seconds, the captain stopped the airplane at the holding position, commonly referred to as a hold short line, for runway 26, the same one they were told they were cleared across. Afterwards, the first officer made an announcement over the PA system, welcoming the passengers, and completed the before takeoff checklist. At 6:05, by the way, look at the timestamp. 6:04 and 33 seconds, 6:05 and 15 seconds. In 45 seconds, he made a PA announcement and ran a before takeoff checklist. I know Sonic the Hedgehog and that sort of stuff. There's some fast, Speedy Gonzales kind of stuff, but that's a lot to accomplish in 45 seconds. At about 6:05 and 15 seconds, while the airplane was still at the hold short line for runway 26, the first officer told the controller Comair 121 was ready to depart at his leisure, like being tongue-in-cheek, kind of polite with the controller. I'm ready to go at your leisure, sir. That's what kind of way he's saying. Whenever you're ready, controller, I'm ready. 3 seconds later, the controller responded, Comair 191, fly runway heading, clear for takeoff. That's the radio call. Neither the first officer nor the controller stated the runway number during the request and the clearance for takeoff. Flight data recorder, FDR data, that's kind of redundant. Flight data recorder data showed that at about 6:05 and 24 seconds now, so this is 9 seconds later, the captain began to taxi the airplane across the runway 26 hold short line. The cockpit voice recorder, CVR recording, showed that the captain called for the lineup checklist at the same time. About 1 second later, Comair 5191 began turning onto runway 26. At about 6:05 and 46 seconds, the first officer called the lineup checklist complete. At 58 seconds, the captain told the first officer, all yours, and the first officer acknowledged, my brakes, my controls. Flight data recorder data showed that the magnetic heading of the airplane at that time was 266, which corresponded with the magnetic heading for runway 26. At 6:06 and 5 seconds, the cockpit voice recorder recorded a sound similar to an increase in engine RPM. Afterward, the first officer stated, set thrust please, to which the captain responded, thrust set. At 6:06 and 16 seconds, the first officer stated that it's weird that there's no lights. And the captain responded, yeah. Can I pause there for a second? If you pull onto a runway and you go, it's weird there's no lights on here. I'm at a loss for words in a way. If you pull onto a runway to take off and the lights are not turned on, can we all agree that we should probably call the controller real quick and go, hey, can we get just confirm, are the lights off right now for the runway, or are they, did I miss a NOTAM? Is there something wrong here? You see, you must be aware of your surroundings. And we say that and we go, oh yeah, in the air. I'm aware of that cloud, I'm aware of that airspace, I'm aware of that TFR. Your surroundings follow you all the way to the tie-down spot, all the way to the hangar. If you pull out on a runway and the lights are off, you've got one of two options. You could ask the controller to turn the lights on, to which his response probably would have been, the lights are on. And you're going to go, I think I'm in the wrong spot. Or you could politely ask, right? And I love what you said there, Hunter. It's like they subconsciously knew something was up, she said, but didn't attempt to investigate it. I'm already full power at this point. I got a busy day ahead of me. I got 3 other flights after this. Let's just get going here. Let's continue reading. Last sentence. Oh, sorry, nope, that was the next slide. So that last slide ended, yeah, 2 seconds later. Here's our next slide. At 6:06 and 24 seconds, the captain called 100 knots, to which the first officer replied, checks, meaning confirmed. At 6:06 and 31 seconds, the captain called V1 rotate. Okay, pause there. Did we not just learn V1 was what, 137? Rotation speed was 146, I think. It's a fast airplane. V1's our decision speed, then rotate. I don't think V1 and rotate happen that quickly. I know they're going fast, and I'm not a CRJ pilot, but I'm just sharing that there. Let's continue. V1, rotate. And stated, whoa, at 6:06 and 31 seconds, flight data recorded showed that the call out for V1 occurred 6 knots earlier than the call out for VR occurred 11 knots early. I believe they knew something was up. They called V1 rotate. V1 was called 6 knots early. Rotate was called 11 knots early. I think, who said this here? The first officer replied, checks. The captain called V1 rotate in one foul swoop. I think the captain looked out and said, we're running out of runway here. Something's wrong. Get this thing off the ground. Trying to take the airplane off 11 knots too early. I don't care if you're trying to take a 172 off 11 knots early or this jet. It's not going to fly. Well, at least. Our story continues. Both callouts took place when the airplane was at an airspeed, I'm in the middle of your screen there, of 131 knots. FDR data also showed that the control columns, listen to this, they knew it. The control columns reached their full aft position at 6:06 and 32 seconds. So look at the times. At 6:06 and 31 seconds, the captain said V1 rotate. 1 second later, they've got the yoke at its full aft position. Again, I've never flown this jet in my life. I would love to one day. But I know in my 172, I do not take off with it in my chest like this. I think they knew very quickly. It was dark, but they saw the end of the runway coming very quickly. And the crazy part about this is they were still below that decision speed where they should have aborted. They didn't have the runway to abort. They would have crashed no matter what. And we're going to talk about a similar crash to this next week, I think, on our social media post. A crash was coming no matter what. But they tried to force it. Again, relating this back to Tenerife. Tenerife, we know that Captain Van Zanten of the KLM plane saw Pan Am because for the last 50 feet before the crash, he drug the tail. There was a gouge in the runway where he drug the tail in a desperate attempt to try to take off. I don't know if we gouged the runway here, but we know the control column was at its full aft position. And we keep reading. That was within 1 second. The control columns reached their full aft position at 6:06 and 32 seconds. And the airplane rotated at a rate of about 10 degrees per second. The airplane impacted an earthen berm, which that footnote 18 says was only 4 feet high. So I don't think the mains left the ground. Hit a 4-foot berm located 265 feet from the end of runway 26. This airplane went off the runway, 265 feet, almost a football field, until it hit this berm, and that's when it crashed and burst into flames. They were still trying to take off a football field length. They were still full power trying to get this thing in the air, off the runway at this point. And it continues. 265 feet from the end of runway 26. And the CVR, that's the cockpit voice recorder, recorded the sound of impact at 6:06 and 33 seconds. Flight data recorder airspeed and altitude data show that the airplane became, and it added there, I cut that out there, basically became airborne about 4 feet until it actually impacted. Temporarily airborne is what it said there. I want to show you this image because it illustrates it so perfectly. Let me get my cursor on your screen here so you can kind of see everything. So we start, and by the way, you can see runway 26 is here. You can see runway 22. Now, 22 is what they're supposed to take. Can you see the confusion when you get to this hold short line here versus they were told to cross this and stop at this hold short line here for 22? Can you see that being a point of confusion a little bit? Add nighttime, and I'm a little bit tired as well. So we start here, all right? Here we get, and you can see it, taxi checklist begins. Taxi checklist complete. From this area, from here to here is that 45 seconds of that non-pertinent conversation about the job. You can now see the takeoff checklist begins right here. We can then see the airplane stops. Takeoff checklist complete right here. Hold short line, where we actually stop. Comair 121 is ready to go. Now again, I know some of you are asking, why didn't the tower see this? It's nighttime. Couldn't they have seen the lights on an unlit piece of pavement? Yeah, but you also have to remember where the tower is located. The tower is actually located off your screen over this way. Their line of sight puts this and this kind of similar. You wouldn't know they're on the wrong runway until probably about over here when you start to actually see it. Now this is also before the point where we have ground radar and ADS-B and everything else associated with it here. So you kind of see, we run our lineup check right here. Then the airplane begins to turn onto runway 26, and here's where we get lineup check complete. From there, they pass out the flight controls, all yours. My brakes, this is all happening down here. We set the thrust, everything's good to go, thrust set. Right here at this intersection is where the red flag should have been. That's weird, no lights. Right as they're about to go through the intersection that is probably all lit up with lights. Yeah, says the captain, in the middle of the intersection of the runway they are supposed to be on with all the lights. 100 knots, airspeed's actually at 103. This is where they say it checks. And listen to this. It's not until here, a heavily loaded airplane, right? Full fuel, full of people. V1 rotate, right here. Airspeed's 131 knots. Whoa actually happens right here. Why do you think they said whoa? To your point, to all you were wondering, well, didn't they see it? Yeah, they saw it. They saw it right here. This is what I mean when there was no time to abort. They realized they were out of runway right here. There was no chop the throttles back and get on the brakes. That may have saved a few lives, yes, but it was another 265 feet over here, sound of impact going through the grass, and they hit a 4-foot berm right here at essentially rotation speed. The end of the runway is when they realized. Why? Well, it was nighttime, and as we know, the lights weren't on. Do you remember back the NOTAM? The runway end identifier lights were out. Team, they were in Lexington, Kentucky with just a landing light barreling down a hunk of pavement with no lights. They didn't see until the landing light shined on it and they realized, whoa, that's grass. That's the end of the runway. I just saw the other end of that runway. So this is interactive, and I want to put it back on you here. How could we have prevented this? This is such a preventable accident. I just want to know from you all, how could we have prevented this? And I want to answer the question. Well, I want you all to type in the chat, and I want to answer the question. Have I ever aborted a takeoff? Many. Many. Do you remember the example with Ella and Gavin? So you all got to see the cute Instagram story where Ella and Gavin said, I said, what's an emergency? And Ella said, everyone remembers Gavin said, if there's fire and blood. Well, Ella said before that, if there's fuel coming out of the wing like last time. Well, when I was in that Cirrus, I thought that fuel cap's a little bit loose. And I took off, and I was already in the air, and Ella goes, I'm counting the water droplets that are coming out of the airplane, Daddy. I said, what? I look at that wing, it's fine. I look at that wing, I go, oh, that's a problem. And maybe you saw the video, it's on Instagram, you can see the reel of it. There's fuel pouring out of the wing. I was already flying. I went around, I landed, I stopped, I checked the fuel cap, I confirmed it was good. I got back in the plane, I started it again. I went out there, I went full power. As soon as I got about 40 knots, fuel started coming out of the wing again, chopped the power back on the brakes, aborted the takeoff. Wow, I mean, I've aborted a million landings. Takeoffs, I remember aborting a takeoff because of skydivers. A long time ago, having skydivers, I remember I was making an IFR departure, this one out of DeLand. DeLand's a big skydiving airport. I remember trying to leave DeLand. I was on an IFR clearance. I remember rolling down the runway, and all of a sudden, it's like 500-foot overcast. Parachutes started coming out of the overcast. I'm thinking, whoa, I'm not about to go through a cloud layer, and somehow they're skydiving in 500-foot overcast. That's a story for another day, and aborted that. I remember flying with Magda. There was, we were next to take off, and there was an airplane that was calling up, I'm on a base, and tower at Ocala does not have a radar. Magda and I are next to take off. We're kind of in a, we were cleared, that's right, Magda. We were cleared to take off. And I'm listening to this other pilot. Mind you, Ocala doesn't have a radar, and this happens to all of us. I'm not making fun of this pilot. This pilot called up, I'm on a left downwind. I mean, I'm on a right base. I mean, I'm on final. And tower goes, I don't see you. I need you to tell me where you are. To the Mike Zulu, you're clear for takeoff. And I thought back to that incident in Providence and literally used words similar to that. And I said, hey, listen, I'm going to let him have the runway. I'm just going to sit. I don't actually see him either. I'm going to sit right here. I'm not going to take off. It was VFR, mind you. That pilot needs a little more attention than I do. I'm good. I want to see him land, and then I'll go. I don't want to. He could be lined up for, actually, that's what it was, Magda. We were taking off 1.8. And at one point, he said he's based for 3.6. And I thought, what? I said, I'm going to sit right here, cancel my takeoff clearance. I'm going to sit right here till he figures out where he is. I don't care if he lands the opposite run. It doesn't matter. Get him on the ground, and then I'll go. It was just that simple. You got to think about those things with that. All right. How can we prevent this? Let's see. Dave said, I think sometimes it's easy to run a checklist as a procedure without anticipating actually revealing a problem. Yes. And so many people let complacency sneak in and just work checklists from rote memorization, and I just can't stand that. Bill said, was sloppy from the start, complacent, unaware, not on their game, not listening to their own concerns. You're right, Bill. And they were tired. There's no doubt about it. Someone asked how old they were. The captain was 35. The first officer was in his 40s. These are young people, right? Awesome, Jordan. Thank you for that. Robin asked, is it normal procedure to assign the flying pilot last minute? I don't know that answer. I never lived the airline life. I don't know that answer. Maybe if there's an airline pilot watching, I know Brian and some others are sometimes watching, they could chime in. I don't know that answer to you. John Dela Cruz, that's one of my solutions, said checking the 4-flight diagram. I'll give you some of mine here as well. And some of yours are great. Alex, yours is great. Don't fall into the trap of negligence. It's good. Let me give you some of these. If you have not started adopting runway callouts, you need to. You will find in most of our videos, hey Lane, great to see you. You'll find in most of our videos, I always do a call out. 2-3 outside, 2-3 inside, we're clear to take off. I've now even started saying, because we have synthetic vision, 2-3 outside, 2-3 on the compass, 2-3 on the synthetic vision. What do I mean? 2-3-0, runway 2-3. On the synthetic vision, it literally shows me a big 2-3 right now. Bug yourself, if you have a heading bug for runway 2-3, bug yourself for that. If you are flying with an iPad now, ForeFlight, Garmin Pilot, it doesn't matter. Do you know what it says now? Doesn't your ForeFlight not call out, approaching runway 2-3, entered runway 2-3? Right? It says it all now for you because you're utilizing the georeferencing with that. Utilize runway callouts. I need you to start adopting these runway callouts. I see 2-3 outside, meaning I physically see it painted on the pavement, and 2-3 on my compass. This is not just for takeoffs, this is for landings as well. I'm landing, I see 2-3 on the ground, and this is so important too on like parallel runways. 2-3 left, 2-3 right, 2-3 center, all of these things as well. And if you don't know, confirm the runway number. Another thing here, that you see that in parentheses there, is the lack of lights. If you ever approach a runway environment and something just doesn't seem right, the lights aren't on, something just seems off, there's some signage you don't recognize, just stop and ask. Slow down and ask. BK, I see what you asked there. Were they under the influence? No, they did a full toxology. There was no alcohol, medication, and they believe they got their proper crew rest as well. Listen, airline life can be hard sometimes. It's a grueling, grueling schedule as well. And the last bullet point I have here is a sterile cockpit. I know they were talking about, I know it was only 45 seconds, but they were talking about their job. When they should have been looking eyes down at a taxiway diagram and looking outside. They missed some key signage and everything else. You know, the NTSB put in their probable cause this. The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the flight crew members' failure, to use available cues and aids to identify the airplane's location on the airport surface during taxi, and their failure to cross-check and verify that the airplane was on the correct runway before takeoff. Contributing to the accident were the flight crew's non-pertinent conversation during taxi, which resulted in a loss of positional awareness, and the Federal Aviation Administration's failure to require that all runway crossings be authorized only by specific air traffic control clearances. Do you know the phrase that you hear now on every ATIS at a towered field? Pilots are required to read back all runway holding position clearances. That came from this accident, right? They just gave them one big generic clearance. They should have slowed down. You get confused. You fall behind the airplane. Even on the ground, you can fall behind the airplane. So with that, my goal is always to be done at the top of the hour. If you have any questions, now is your opportunity to ask those questions. Anything related to this accident, anything aviation related, I'm more than happy to take them. Jordan, I saw your question there. Before I take Jordan's question, I want to remind you all, MzeroAcontest.com. If you want an opportunity to win this very survival kit right down here, I know you'll never have to use it, but it's going to make you feel real good that you have it. MzeroAcontest.com to go ahead and enter to win that this month. You do need to re-enter. Just because you didn't win the iPad last month, I do need you to re-enter as well. Jordan Penning, our favorite UK pilot, asked, do you have any tips for dealing with international languages in the pattern? In France, they always speak French, so I find it hard to visualize the pattern.
In Spain?
Yeah, in Spain it's the same thing. They will speak Spanish if people are speaking Spanish. Jordan, they are under ICAO rules. The international language of aviation is what? It is English. Why do so many pilots come from other countries to learn to fly in the United States? One, an FAA certificate is as it stands. This isn't a pompous statement by any means. An FAA certificate can take you anywhere. An FAA certificate is recognized worldwide, right? It's easy to transfer to other ones if you need to. If you're flying an N-registered aircraft and you have a US, I can fly 23 Mike Zulu in any country that, well, almost any country. Some countries aren't friendly to the United States, right? That's politics. But almost any country, I can fly under my FAA certificate in an FAA registered aircraft. That's why so many pilots come to train in the United States. The other reason is they want them to learn English. And they have to get a specific ICAO level of English proficiency. As we learned, there's 4 levels of English proficiency. Under ICAO law, if I was flying in Mallorca, and they don't speak Spanish in Mallorca, oddly enough, they speak a language called Mallorcan, which is nowhere close to Spanish. It's more like Portuguese and Italian with other words thrown in there that don't even make sense. I'll give you the example I always give you. People always say, oh, Mallorcan, it must be so similar to Spanish. No, in Spanish, cat is gato. In Mallorcan, cat is mush. In Spanish, dog is perro. In Mallorcan, dog is ca. C-A, 2 letters. Talk about I'm confused, right? It is confused. There's no Rosetta Stone for Mallorcan. Anyways, if I was flying in Mallorca, and I'm having an opportunity to do that this summer actually, and the controllers are all speaking Mallorcan, and here comes, American Jason, and I start speaking English, the controllers are now required to start speaking English. The other pilots, too, should also start speaking English as well. Now, Jordan, I also know what's rules and what happens in the real world are very different sometimes. You need to exercise your authority, what's called your pilot in command authority, and say, hey, just real quick, it would really be beneficial to me if we could speak English. Thanks. How do you say that in a polite manner as well? So that's good. I want to answer one on YouTube. From the Penman22. Great to see you. Are non-towered airports more dangerous than towered? The answer is no. No, they're not. Towered airports can be just as dangerous. Anywhere you get a bunch of pilots congregating can be dangerous, right? So it's just something to ponder with that. No, non-towered airports are not more dangerous. I don't know. I don't have the stats to back that up, but I'm sure they exist. Where do most mid-air collisions happen, right? We had a mid-air collision that happened in a non-towered airport just a few weeks ago. Very, very tragic. The Jack Brown Seaplane Base, where I flew, and Polk State College, which is an amazing, amazing school that we support here in Florida. Tragic. And then think back to the accident of the Cirrus and the Key Lime Air. That was a towered field, mid-air collision. How about the Meridian that overran I can't think of the aircraft. That was a towered field. Think back to the one that happened in I can think of, if we looked at all the mid-airs and said, do they happen at towered fields? Do they happen at non-towered fields? I bet it'd be probably 50-50. Just my opinion. I don't have the data to back that up. Brad, did I re-up my listing for the Cub? I have not. I'm going to put it on Hangar 67. I just haven't had 2 seconds to do it. If you're interested in buying it, I'll fly it all the way to Wisconsin for you if you're interested in buying it. With that, we can talk. Or if you know somebody, Brad, we can talk. Think how great your weddings would be, Brad, if you had a 1940 original J3 Cub for the wedding photos. It's like people rent classic cars, they could rent classic airplanes from you. It'd be romantic.
I'm not flying it.
Magda said she's not flying all the way to Wisconsin with me. That would be that'd be tough. John Dela Cruz, CFI check ride tips. Wow, my friend. Listen, first off, if you have not networked with Hunter, I would connect with Hunter because she just lived through it. And Hunter will tell you this advice is sound and she'll have some of her own. Your CFI check ride is really 2 check rides, Mr. Dela Cruz. John, teach me steep turns at a private pilot level. Okay, great, ground lesson, private pilot steep turns. That was awesome, John. Now I'm a commercial pilot, teach me steep turns. You're gonna go, okay, same thing at different levels. That's gonna be a big thing for you. And the best advice I have for you, Mr. Dela Cruz, you've been hearing me say this for many, many years. Make your own lesson plans. I know there are commercially available lesson plans for sale and for free. Just make your own lesson plans. I saw friend after friend fail their CFI check ride on the oral exam because it began to be this is kind of a graphic way to explain it, but it's correct, this incestual sharing of their lesson plans. One day, the DPE, who was also my DPE, and I got to see this from the stands, I was working on my CFI, eventually goes, I've seen this same steep turn lesson plans the past 4 applicants. You didn't make your own lesson plans, did you? And the applicant lied. Oh no, they're mine. And he called him out online. He said, you know what, as a CFI, you have to have integrity. And I know for a fact, so-and-so used these same lesson plans. And I'm failing you on a lack of integrity. Because what does it say? It says we have to be of good moral character. I've never in my world heard of anybody getting failed on their moral character for a check ride other than that moment. But it happened. Make your own lesson plans. It will benefit you greatly, my friend. Hunter says the best way to avoid CFI burnout. I have a lot of students, and even when I'm off, I'm not off. Texts, phone calls at all hours of the day. I love being a CFI. It's amazing, but I need to find a balance between work and personal time. Hunter, I was the same way. And we were just having this conversation with a friend of ours who's a realtor. Like, and this, you're wondering, how does this relate to real estate? Being a realtor is not a whole lot different than being a CFI. People call you and text you at all times a day. They want to see the house now. They want to do a discovery flight now. They want their answer now. We live in a want it now society. Hunter, you need to have a day of rest. You need to say, listen, on Sundays, I'm just off. On Mondays, I'm just off. I'm not answering emails. I'm not answering texts. I need a day because, Hunter, if you cannot pass an I'm safe checklist, not only is that not safe, you're not delivering the best value to your learners. Magda and I have adopted sleep-in Saturdays. And we just sleep, we don't set the alarm, and we got sleep-in Saturdays, and we take Sunday as a true day off. I'm talking on Sunday, well, Saturday we sleep in. Sunday is our true day of rest where I'm not checking email. I try to take my screen time down to this, other than getting up Audible to fire up to listen to my book and read along with it and have my cups of coffee and enjoy we take our weekends serious now. And I realize you can't always do that, right? Maybe your weekend needs to be a Monday instead. You got to adapt to it, but you've got to avoid that burnout as well. So, all right, let's grab some more here. Let's see. All right. Is it against the ACS to use pre-made lesson plans? Again, it's not against the ACS. I'm just telling you, you will gain more benefit doing it on your own. That is my professional opinion. Lane says, I'm going to be a CFI and a realtor. So Lane, you get it. It's hard to find time off. It just says on their Facebook user, oral portion done, computer test, well, 90%. Awesome, awesome score as well here. Let's see, other questions, other comments. By the way, so great to see so many of you at Sun and Fun. Chris Ritchie asks, are most airplanes put under a tax ID number? You mean, are you put in an LLC? That is a lawyer question. However, I will tell you, all of our airplanes are owned by an LLC, and that is purely for liability purposes. We did that even before we had anything to protect, you know, other than our good name. Yes, if you have assets, and your airplane is an asset, or are going to have assets, you need to meet with some sort of, and there's tax implications for this as well. You need to be smart about that to protect yourself as well. Tyler, hi, back to you. All right, thank you, John Dela Cruz. Yeah, looking to see so many of you at Oshkosh as well, already preparing for that. All right, other questions, other comments. We will be, John Dela Cruz said, where will we be at Oshkosh? We're going to be in Hangar B. Magda and I are thinking of another, get together. We're thinking about doing something. We haven't planned anything just yet. We want to do like a fundraiser My heart has been in aviation scholarships lately. I'd like to do a foundation fundraiser. She and I need to map that out because we got 3 months to do something, but we can put something like that together. We're kind of planning on that. So if we do a get together, it would be like a paid dinner, all going to aviation scholarships is the goal. So if that's something you're up to, keep that on your radar as well. Do a silent auction, that kind of stuff as well. All right. Let's see. I want to take Dr. John Bentley's question here. We're waiting for the government to award U.S. Air Force introductory flight train rotary wing course contract. I'm building the course from the ground up, new aircraft classrooms. Wow, any advice? My friend, first off, thank you. I love anytime people get into aviation education and just sharing a ground up program. I know we would personally love to hear more about that. And I know it's rotary wing, but there's a lot of similarities. And I'd love to see if we could help with that at all. If you'd reach out to the support team, I'd love to kind of learn more. If you could, obviously in a Facebook comment, it's hard to see everything. Magda, will you share with Dr. John the email, support@MzeroA? I would love to just kind of learn more about that. And Dr. John just mentioned with the team to get that to Magda's desk would be the right desk to get that on. It'd be nice to see how we could learn some more. Brad, yes, we'd love to see you there as well. BK said, Jason, the problem is aviation always needs revising. We forget what we learn. My friend, that's why we're here. That's why our slogan is a good pilot is always learning. It's so important, so important. AirJ said, can you do a plane ownership podcast? Love to hear your advice. We did a series on aircraft ownership not too long ago. Jamie Beckett did one with us. It exists out there. I don't know if I'll do a whole podcast on it, but series on it, yes. It does exist as well. Andy Armstrong, I will take you up on that. Mag, will you get a screenshot of that? Andy, will you do the same though? Because I don't know if I'll be able to find you again on Facebook. Reach out to the support team so we have your contact information about what you're thinking. Would love that. Send it to Magda. Andrew wants to know, why do we never see Magda on camera? Wow, Magda, why do we never see, you want to come over and say hi to everybody? Okay, let me tell you the truth. She's got to get her hair done, her makeup done, her high heels on, all that sort of stuff. I'm just teasing. So we do. She's been some of it. We got some new series coming up too. She's going to be working on with us as well. So listen, it's top of the hour. It is lunchtime, and I'm hungry. I didn't get to be 6'4" by missing meals. Let me tell you that. So great to see so many of you at Sun and Fun. Look forward to seeing you all up at Oshkosh. One more time, that URL is MzeroAcontest.com as well. Eric, Mr. Verselli, Brad, Jordan, all of you, so great to see you. Listen, have a wonderful Easter. Spend time, whether Easter is your thing or not, use this weekend to spend time with family because that's what it's all about. Go out there, be a light, and just choose to live more abundantly. Don't get into this defeating mindset of lack because you weren't meant to live in a mindset of lack. You were meant to live in a mindset of more than enough. You're pilots. You do something pretty cool. And you are called to be more abundant with that. Have a blessed, abundant, outstanding rest of your day. And most importantly, remember that a good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you.